On July 17, 2025, Minho Park, a 22-year-old college student from South Korea, stood at Incheon Airport about to say goodbye to his family. It was going to be his first time traveling overseas, and he was buzzing with anticipation and excitement. Park's destination? Cambodia. You see, his trip came up rather unexpectedly. A senior at his university had told him about a short-term expo opportunity available in Cambodia. The job was presented not as a permanent position, but as short-term event-related work, helping with coordination and promotion. After the introduction, Park communicated with a recruiter via Telegram and received what appeared to be official-looking documents with assurances that all travel details, including airfare, would be taken care of. Park, described by friends as bright and quietly ambitious, was eager for overseas experience and the chance to earn money. The money part was hard to refuse. It's not clear exactly how much he was offered, but he was likely promised a high short-term payout with monthly salaries up to $10,000 per month, which is a lot, and would have been like at least 5 times what someone of Park's age can make in South Korea. So on July 17, 2025, Minho Park said goodbye to his family and left for Cambodia. When his flight landed in Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, Park was met with individuals who claimed to be company recruiters and taken away in a van. And that was the last time he was seen alive in public. Soon after, Park's family in Korea received an anonymous call. The caller claimed Park had caused trouble and demanded a ransom of 50 million won, or roughly $35,000, threatening harm if the money was not paid. Park's family reported the incident to Korean authorities, but communication with the kidnappers was cut off after 4 days. On August 8th, Cambodian police discovered a pickup truck on a remote road near Bokor Mountain in Kampot province, a region well known for illegal scam compounds. Inside was Park's body. The autopsy confirmed that Park died of cardiac arrest caused by extensive torture and physical abuse. Cambodian authorities arrested 3 Chinese nationals linked to Park's death and charged them with murder and human trafficking. It is estimated, based on survivors' accounts, that Park is just one of over 1,000 young Koreans currently believed to have been trafficked and kept in labor camps, forced to work in scam compounds, and subjected to violence if they resisted or tried to escape. The victims are not only Korean, but also include large numbers of Chinese, Vietnamese, Filipinos, and other Southeast Asians. The murder of the young Chinese man who was beaten to death while trying to escape a scam compound in Cambodia was reported by rescued Korean victims. News of Park's death ignited a media firestorm and national outrage in South Korea, exposing one of the largest modern-day human trafficking and cybercrime rings in Southeast Asia. Families of other missing Koreans came forward, and videos released by rescued victims described the same recruitment pattern. Offers made through social media and Telegram, leading to forced labors in Cambodian scam compounds. Even regular Korean tourists began reporting unsolicited messages received right after entering Cambodia, advertising high-paying part-time work, suggesting whoever's behind this may have access to traveler information and networks. So, what the hell is really happening in Cambodia? Who's behind these operations, and how did the US and UK end up getting involved in this, freezing roughly $15 billion in crypto assets in the process? It turns out that Cambodia, which I knew very little about until now, is a magnet for Chinese criminal gangs and global scam operations. To understand why, you need to look at its modern history, a history marked by war, chaos, and corruption. Cambodia's troubles began decades ago. Let's break this down, starting before 1970. You've probably heard of the Vietnam War, right? Cambodia actually shares a long border with Vietnam. Under the leader Prince Norodom Sihanouk, Cambodia tried to remain neutral during the Vietnam War, but permitted North Vietnamese troops to use its territory for supply routes and sanctuaries. Many right-wing politicians, military leaders, and city residents in Cambodia resented this and believed the Sihanouk was endangering national sovereignty and favoring communists. In 1970, while Prince Sihanouk was out of the country, General Lon Nol, with the backing of US-leaning elites and tacit US support, staged a coup, overthrew the prince, and established a pro-American government. Lon Nol then tried to drive out the North Vietnamese troops but failed, so the US responded by launching heavy bombing campaigns in Cambodia, targeting Vietnamese communist bases along the border. In retaliation and to protect their supply lines, North Vietnam gave increased support to a Cambodian communist movement called the Khmer Rouge. The Khmer Rouge gained strength, numbers, and territory partly due to rural anger over the destruction caused by US bombing and the Lon Nol government's brutality. This triggered a bloody civil war between 1970 and 1975, during which around 275,000 to 310,000 people died from violence and chaos. The US-backed Lon Nol regime fought a losing war against the Khmer Rouge, who were backed by North Vietnam and China. On April 17, 1975, the Khmer Rouge won the civil war by capturing the capital of Cambodia and overthrowing the US-backed Lon Nol regime. They then immediately implemented radical violent policies to create an extreme communist society. The Khmer Rouge sought to create a classless agrarian utopia, abolishing private property, religion, and traditional family structures. Over 2 million city dwellers were forced into the countryside for hard labor, labeled new peasants. The regime was deeply suspicious of dissent. Anyone perceived as opposing it, or even simply educated, such as teachers, lawyers, doctors, monks, or people who wore glasses because they looked intellectual, was targeted, arrested, tortured, and executed. This is why, even today, you supposedly don't see many people wearing glasses in Cambodia, even as fashion statements, because of that painful history. Maybe some of you watching from Cambodia right now can fact check me on this. Anyway, many people were executed simply because of their background or any perceived Western ties. Minority groups, including Cham Muslims, the Vietnamese, Chinese Cambodians, Christians, and Buddhists, faced a brutal persecution. The Khmer Rouge sought to erase all religion and class distinctions, literally by killing anyone who represented them. The massive forced relocations, disastrous agricultural experiments, and labor camps led millions to starvation, disease, and death. From 1975 to 1979, between 1.5 to 2 million Cambodians died, out of a total population of about 7 to 8 million. That's nearly a quarter of the population wiped out in just 4 years. The Khmer Rouge was finally overthrown in 1979 after Vietnam invaded Cambodia and toppled the regime. Vietnam occupied the country and installed a communist government, but persistent guerrilla warfare, international isolation, and pressure from the US and China eventually forced Vietnam to withdraw its troops in 1989. With Vietnam gone, global powers brokered peace accords in the early 1990s. The UN supervised elections, the monarchy was restored, and Cambodia transitioned towards a constitutional monarchy and multi-party democracy. But by then, after years of brutal civil war and the nightmare of genocide, Cambodia spent the 1980s and early 1990s devastated by poverty and instability. When a society loses both structure and trust, corruption and crime becomes almost inevitable. With an empty treasury, a broken legal system, and public officials paid less than a living wage, bribery and patronage turned into survival mechanisms. A favor, a connection, or a payment becomes the only way to get things done. Ministries, police, courts, and businesses soon began intertwined in a web of personal loyalty and kickbacks rather than laws and merit. Even the new democratic government that emerged in the early 1990s couldn't root out such deeply institutionalized corruption. So when Cambodia welcomed major foreign investment and aggressively courted infrastructure money from China in the 2000s, without first addressing its deep corruption crisis, It not only brought billions of dollars for roads, bridges, and buildings, but also attracted a wave of Chinese businesses looking for a place to conceal illicit activities. Special economic zones sprang up in places like Sihanoukville and the Golden Triangle, where casinos, luxury hotels, and online betting operations flourished. These zones, often loosely regulated and physically walled off, became magnets for questionable Chinese investors who had little interest in legitimate trade. That's when Chinese criminal syndicates truly took root. Groups with names like Prince Group, which I'll come back to later, set up sprawling casino resorts, real estate operations, and behind closed doors, cyber scam compounds and forced labor camps. Local Cambodian authorities, often corrupt or complicit, provided protection. Okay, so you have all these Chinese criminal syndicates doing their thing that's confined to specific regions of Cambodia, but how did that turn into this global scam empire that involves human trafficking and forced labor? What was the trigger? By the late 2010s, Cambodia's casino towns, flush with Chinese cash, was thriving on gambling and luxury real estate. But something happened in 2018. President Xi Jinping of China ramped up a sweeping crackdown on corruption and organized crime across China, targeting both criminal syndicates and the officials who protected them. Police and prosecutors launched mass arrests and asset seizures, especially against groups involved in gambling, money laundering, and cross-border scams. This Chinese government campaign squeezed criminal gangs out of China's rapidly closing gray zones. Many syndicates and the businesses tied to them began searching for safe havens abroad. Some considered relocating to countries like the Philippines, but President Duterte had already declared war on crime and corruption after taking office in 2016, launching a nationally publicized crackdown on criminal networks, drug syndicates, and corrupt officials. So that wasn't the best place. In contrast, Cambodia, with its booming gambling industry, loose regulations, and history of official corruption, naturally emerged as a new sanctuary for Chinese organized crime. Then in 2019, Beijing pressured Cambodia to ban online gambling, determined to curb cross-border betting that was draining cash from China and contributing to domestic crime. Overnight, hundreds of Chinese casino investors, operators, and criminal organizations in Cambodia lost their main revenue source. In response, the same casino structure, hotel towers, and walled compounds quickly pivoted to cyber scams and human trafficking. Former gambling halls became call centers and scam factories, often run by the same syndicate and protected by the local officials. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the shift. As travel and legitimate gambling dried up, organized crime groups found that online fraud, especially crypto and investment scams, was far more lucrative and harder to police. Cryptocurrency enabled fast, anonymous payments and quick laundering of proceeds, making it easier than ever to move illicit cash beyond the reach of Cambodian and Chinese authorities. By 2021, Cambodia's special economic zones were no longer just casino hubs. They had become the nerve centers of industrial-scale scam compounds. Human trafficking exploded as criminal gangs lured foreign workers with fake job ads and forced them into running global scam operations targeting victims from the US to Europe to Asia. So if you've ever received a random text about crypto investments, some job opportunities abroad that sounds way too good to be true, or had some fake profiles reaching out to you on dating apps or Telegram, chances are you've seen the shadow of Cambodia's scam empire. At the center of this global web is the Prince Group, a Cambodian conglomerate founded and chaired by Chen Zhu. Chen Zhu is 37 years old, was born in China, and holds both British and Cambodian citizenships. Right now, he's facing charges from both the US and UK for orchestrating one of the world's largest financial fraud and trafficking networks, as well as wire fraud and money laundering. He has not been captured and currently is still at large. The Prince Group quickly built a vast business empire in Cambodia, dominating real estate, banking, casinos, and infrastructure. On the surface, their businesses appear totally legitimate, and Chen Zhu has long presented himself as a philanthropist in Cambodia, providing millions of dollars for COVID-19 relief, donating medical equipment, building schools, and supporting charity projects in Cambodia. Beneath the surface, however, US and UK prosecutors allege that the Prince Group is the epicenter of industrial-scale scams and human trafficking, laundering billions through over 100 shell companies across the globe. Their networks have acquired luxury properties in Phnom Penh and central London, and allegedly bribed officials to operate with impunity. Authorities in the US and UK believe Prince Group's scam operations cover more than 30 countries, with thousands of forced laborers running online scams from high-security compounds inside Cambodia's special economic zones. So what kind of scams are we talking about here? There are many, but I'll just go through a few examples. First, there are romance scams or pig butchering. The term pig butchering comes from a Chinese phrase meaning killing pig plate. It describes how scammers fatten up their targets, much like farmers fatten a pig before slaughter. It often starts with a totally casual message on a dating app or social media. Sometimes it's like, sorry, wrong number, but you seem nice. Then comes the weeks of chatting and flirting. Now, we're not just talking about traditional romance scams here, where the scammer claims to be in love but in trouble and asks for small amounts of money several times. Sometimes, it does turn into sextortion, where you're lured to send private or embarrassing photos of yourself, and suddenly the fake friend threatens to send those pictures to your family or colleagues unless you pay up. But that's not the end game here. Pig butchering has become the dominant model in Cambodia because it yields much bigger payouts. The scammer leads the victim gradually to a fake investment, usually in crypto or online trading. They show fake gains, encourage larger deposits, and keep the victim engaged for as long as possible. Only at the end do they butcher the victim, wiping out every penny they can get. Scammers will eventually let victims withdraw small profits to build trust before executing the larger loss. Then there are the fake job and lottery scams. That's where a lot of the trafficking happens. These target people, especially young adults and students in places like Korea, China, or Southeast Asia, who are looking for quick money. The recruiters promise high-paying jobs, paid airfare, easy work, and when the recruits land, their phones and passports are confiscated. Now, they're trapped in scam compounds, forced to work long hours in call centers, scamming targets all over the world, including the US and Europe. Inside, these forced laborers are handed scripts, learning to pitch crypto schemes, convincing people on WhatsApp or Telegram to dump money into fake trading sites, or copying lines for business email compromise. Oh yeah, there are also business email compromise scams or BEC scams, which involve hacking or spoofing corporate email accounts to trick companies into wiring money to fraudulent bank accounts, often disguised as legitimate vendor payments or invoices. Between 2019 and 2023, global losses from the BEC scams exceeded $50 billion according to the FBI, with a growing share of operations traced back to syndicates now based in Southeast Asia, including Cambodia. The proceeds from all these scams are laundered through cryptocurrency, shell companies, and spent on luxury purchases, including high-end watches, private jets, rare artwork, and even a Picasso painting bought at a New York auction house. This complex web makes it almost impossible for authorities to trace or recover the stolen funds. And if anyone tries to escape these compounds, the risks are extreme. Survivors and investigators have reported cases of torture, electrocution, and murder, as well as the presence of online furnaces used to dispose of bodies. If you're sitting there thinking, man, I would never fall for this, just remember, most of the people trapped inside these compounds thought the same thing. Maybe they checked references, did some due diligence, and still ended up having their passports confiscated, being beaten, electrically shocked, and told to scam strangers or face even worse consequences. The saddest part is that in order to survive, you have to obey orders and scam others, often people in the exact same desperate situation, even though you know it's criminal. If you ever try to escape, some survivors say you risk being killed, or at the very least, you will never be the same person when you return. Remember the case of the Chinese actor Wang Xing, who was abducted and trafficked into one of these scam compounds, but later rescued through a joint Chinese-Thai coordinated operation? Wang, a 31-year-old actor, flew from Shanghai to Bangkok after being offered what seemed like a legitimate film audition through WeChat. But as soon as he landed, he was kidnapped near a Thai border town notorious for human trafficking into Myanmar. He was smuggled across the border to a compound called Apollo Park, later revealed to be run by Chinese criminal syndicates. His captors shaved his head and forced him to spend hours typing scam messages as part of what they call fraud training, the exact same kind of cyber scam operations now run across Cambodia and Myanmar. Wang later told police that he had been trapped with at least 50 other Chinese nationals, all held under armed guard and subjected to beatings and torture for disobedience. He said that if he hadn't been rescued in time, he would have been forced to scam fellow Chinese citizens. And his story is proof that this could happen to anyone. Minho Park's horrific death and the public outrage that followed forced South Korean President Jae Myung-lee to act swiftly and decisively. Within days, emergency diplomatic delegations were dispatched to Cambodia. Travel bans were issued for Korean citizens, and coordinated repatriation operations began for both trafficked victims and Korean perpetrators who had become entangled in scam rings. Korean authorities have already apprehended and repatriated a plane full of Korean perpetrators, causing a scene at Incheon Airport, where police are also screening outbound travelers to Cambodia and questioning young people about their travel reasons. Those who say they're visiting online friends they never met before are being strongly advised to cancel their trips. But it didn't just stop there. President Lee even personally called Thailand's Prime Minister, urging coordinated regional raids and border blockades against known scam transit routes, especially since Thailand shares long borders with Cambodia. This didn't go over well with the Cambodian Prime Minister, who, while promising cooperation with South Korea, also expressed visible irritation. He stated that South Korea should focus on educating its own people not to fall for scams, rather than interfering in Cambodia's domestic affairs. This diplomatic tension reflected not just national pride, but also the sensitivities of Cambodia's politically connected elite, some of whom were implicated in these criminal syndicates. That's because, on the ground, political and police corruption runs deep in Cambodia. Relatives of top officials, powerful business people, even members of parliaments are intertwined with the syndicates behind these scam compounds. It's a system where local enforcement is often compromised, and powerful families can block investigations, let alone prosecutions. Still, South Korea's high-profile stance and relentless diplomacy appears to be working. It's not clear whether South Korea directly appealed to the West for cooperation on human trafficking and digital crime, but within weeks, the US and UK launched one of the largest joint financial investigations in modern history. But why now? Well, it's a matter of national interest for both the US and UK. The US Treasury reported that Americans alone lost over $16 billion to online investment scams last year. More than $10 billion of that linked directly to Southeast Asian scam centers like those run by Prince Group, with similarly massive losses in the UK and other allied nations. These scams have wiped out retirement funds, college savings, and in some cases, entire livelihoods for tens of thousands of Americans and British citizens. The US and UK working together froze about $15 billion in Bitcoin tied to Cambodia's Prince Group and froze about $130 million in London real estate linked to the network. According to the US Department of Justice, this represented the largest forfeiture action in the department's history. They also sanctioned at least 146 individuals and over 100 entities affiliated with Prince Group, and initiated asset freezes and investigations spanning London and other global financial centers. Even China, already known for its tough stance on organized crime and corruption, is escalating enforcement. Now, if you're a criminal in Cambodia, you know you're in some deep shit when China is on your ass. Chinese authorities have confirmed mass deportation of criminals from Cambodian scam centers. Over 130 suspects flown back to China aboard government-sanctioned planes for prosecution. Beijing's tougher tone signals that the issue has become too big to ignore, driven by public outrage over Chinese victims and international embarrassment over how these criminal networks with Chinese origins have come to dominate the global scam economy. The result is a rare moment of the US and China working together against a common enemy to protect their own citizens. For once, the US, UK, China, South Korea, and Thailand are on the same side, cooperating to dismantle one of the largest criminal industries on earth. Hundreds have already been arrested or extradited. Entire compounds have been raided. With such intense global attention, scam organizers are fleeing Cambodia, moving to countries with even weaker enforcement like Myanmar, Laos, and parts of Africa, making these criminal networks harder to shut down. Meanwhile, unsuspecting job seekers and travelers are still being lured into Cambodia or trafficked to new scam hubs where their passports and documents are confiscated upon arrival and they're forced into labor. As enforcement ramps up, these victims are often just transported along with the syndicates as they relocate, making rescue even more challenging for law enforcement and families. Multiple official sources now estimate about 200,000 people of many different nationalities are trapped in scam compounds across Cambodia. So another challenge for governments would be differentiating those who are trafficked and had no choice but to commit crimes against their will from those who committed crimes voluntarily, because this blurs lines between victim and offender, which is a nuance that's frequently overlooked. So what can we take away from all this? I can think of 2 points. First of all, young people and job seekers everywhere need to stay alert. If you're randomly pitched overseas job opportunities that sound too good to be true, that's already a red flag right there. Protect your identity and your money. If something feels off, just trust your instinct and don't underestimate how sophisticated or patient these scammers are. Second of all, I'm really mindful of how this negative news narrative will impact ordinary Cambodian citizens, because this isn't all of Cambodia. Back in 1950s, Cambodia's capital, Phnom Penh, was one of Asia's most vibrant cities with tall buildings, and Cambodia was actually a wealthier country than South Korea, even sending aid to South Korea. But war and decades of poverty changed that. So today, the average Cambodian survives on less than $200 a month, and tourism is still lifeblood for families everywhere. The scam lords, protected by a corrupt few, are absolutely not the majority, and the whole country shouldn't be vilified. So don't fall for scams, but also don't fall for the headlines and stereotypes. Cambodia deserves better. I believe that you, watching this video right now, are smart enough to think critically and independently, so you won't unfairly stereotype an entire country based on this. If you found this video insightful, be sure to subscribe to Asian Boss and share it with your friends. This video is more of a quick breakdown of a current event, rather than our usual deep dives into interesting companies, business, tech, and culture. So keep supporting us if you'd like to see more deep dives on current events as well. Our mission is always to bring you the most authentic, in-depth insights from Asia that you won't get in Western media. We try our best to research as much as possible, but we might not get everything right. So we really value your constructive feedback and even your topic suggestions. That way, we can all learn something together, which I think is really cool. So thanks for being part of our journey. Thanks for watching. And as always, stay curious.